Again, I was born in a little town about 20 miles east of St. Louis. I lived in Illinois in St. Clair County, and I was named Martha Elizabeth Schumacher. And it was a name I didn't like as I was growing up. It sounded too straight and old. I was named Martha after my paternal grandmother, and Elizabeth after my mother. And I was born in September the 5th, 1912. And I had a brother 3 years older, and his name was William. And a sister 3 years younger, whose name was Esther Frederica. And William was named after our mother's maiden name, William Schaefer Schumacher. And he was born in 1909. And my sister was born in 1915 and named Esther Frederica. And Frederica was my maternal grandmother. And we lived in a double brick house that had 2 floors, and the upstairs at the back was a big porch all across where we liked to play a lot. And my parents were my grandmother Martha Schumacher, and my grandfather died before I was born, and my mother's mother was Frederica Schaefer, and that grandfather also had passed away before. I don't remember too much about my father, but I forgot to mention that my grandfather, his father was Wilhelm Schumacher, and my other grandfather was Adam Schaefer. And my father was a brick mason, and he worked with all kinds of cement and things, making gravestones and sidewalks and building with brick. And he somehow, I never did hear anyone really say, but he contacted Lockjaw, and we lived in Summerfield, which was just a small village, and most of the medicines and things that came that the doctor received, he had to get from St. Louis. And his medicine didn't arrive that day, and he passed on that night. after not being able to stand the pain and suffering that he went through. And then my mother took care of we three children, and I guess William and I were always up to some mischief because my father's brother, Lois, who was going to school and learning different businesses to carry on, would come by the house and he'd correct us. So it made it a little easier for her. And that, at the time, I was probably around 5, 6 years old. And my brother was with 8 or 9, and my sister was like 2 or so. And my mother took care of us until she contacted the flu during World War I, which I remember her being bedfast, and her mother was staying with us and caring for her. And then she knew she wasn't going to live and had given up all hope. She requested that my sister and I not be separated, that whoever took one took the other, and it was fine with her if my brother went to live with grandmother Shoemaker. And it worked out that all the family was at the house when she passed away. But I didn't want to miss school. I was really into school. And I asked if I couldn't go to school. And they said, well, if my mother was still alive when the last bell rang, we didn't live too far from school, but that I could run on to school and make it not be called absent. So it just happened about the time the bell was tolled that she passed away. So I didn't get to go to school. And I don't remember too much about what happened, except that Aunt Lou, my father's sister, had 2 children, and they were about Bill's my age, and she didn't feel like they could afford to take care of us. And Aunt Lizzie, another of my father's sisters, had 2 boys, and they were Harold and I were the same age as Norman, and Bill were the same age. So they didn't feel like they could afford taking any other children to take Esther and I together. And that's the way it was to all the families. They all had children about the same age, except Aunt Alvita and Uncle John. Uncle John was my mother's brother, and he was married to Elvina Levinger, and they didn't have any children. So they took Esther and I, and my father's brother lived with my grandmother, and they took my brother, which worked out okay for all of us. And we had a good home with Uncle John and Aunt Albina. Only I missed my mother so. At the time of her funeral, two of the women, young women that I liked at the church, we did belong to the evangelical church, and where I was confirmed and baptized. And I liked these young women, but it aggravated me at my mother's funeral that they sang, and I thought, how can anybody sing and be happy when you're at a funeral? And I just didn't talk to anybody about it, but it bothered me so. And I just decided they weren't very good girls, or they wouldn't be singing at my mother's funeral. It was really hard on me because I didn't have anybody to talk to, and Alvina did the best she could raising children that weren't her own. So she didn't explain anything to me. And when she took my sister and I home right after the funeral, we passed the house where the telephone connections were, and Mrs. Miller was in charge of that. And she came out and told Aunt Albina to give her a call and tell her how we reacted the first night that we were at the house. And that made me angry because I thought if I cried and Albina will have to tell Mrs. Miller, and knowing that she's in charge of the telephone secretary, she'd let everybody know that I cried. And I didn't want that known. And I had an awful time getting through all that. And the house, then on top of everything else, they had an auctioneer sell all our furniture and everything. But I had a desk in the living room where I'd sit and do my homework. And when they took it out to sell, I just felt like that was the end of the world as far as I was concerned. And everything I had really thought was worth hanging on to was gone. So I had to deal with that in my way, and was to be rather rebellious. But the house that we lived in was, like I said earlier, was a big old brick house. It was in good shape and had plenty of rooms upstairs. If anybody would have burned it, the house belonged to Uncle Jake, my father's brother, and so he had let us live in the downstairs, but he never rented it upstairs, and that's where we played. And we had a set of lawn swings for our dolls, and different furniture for our dolls and things. We had them all set upstairs. When we went to Albina's, we didn't take much with us, in the way of toys or anything, but there was when we went to the house, it was a big white house with a front porch and on the downstairs, and then the roof of that porch acted as a place if you wanted to sit down on it, but wasn't finished off for a porch. But we usually sat on the front porch because that's where we had our swing and the chairs. And we had 3 bedrooms upstairs, and a bedroom, kitchen, and parlor, and sitting room on the first floor, and a big back porch closed in, and when it was really cold, we could keep food out there. And we had a cat, a calico cat, which we played with quite a bit. All family. And Alvina would get Blackie, and we'd hitch her to the buggy, and we'd go visit Aunt Maggie, who was Aunt Alvina's sister, who lived quite a distance, probably about 5 miles from Summerfield. She lived near Mascoutah, Illinois. And we'd go visit them, and we'd stay till it was dark, and then we'd have to ride through the woods and see that light that lights up the fence posts. And I'd ride down, I can't call the name of it, what we called it, and you could see like somebody jogging through the forest carrying a light, and it would just be a ball of fire just bouncing from post to post. And we'd watch that, and we'd tell spooky stories. And
do you remember any of the stories?
No, I don't remember any of that. I remember about the stories we told. But we'd always make it, well, they were really made up stories.
Oh, okay.
As we walked around, we'd say, well, there goes ghost number 1, and there's another one over there carrying a lantern, and just talk such stuff. But the thing that I remember the best, I think, about our rides with Blackie, was a gentle horse, and when we'd start home from Aunt Maggie's, it'd be pitch dark, and I mean dark, and the stars would be sparkling all through the sky, and if it was time for full moon, it'd be beautiful, but most of the time it was really dark, and and Alvina would just kind of lay the reins down, and she said, "Let's go home, Blackie." And Blackie would take off, and through all those country roads, she'd find her way home. And then Alvina would let Esther and I out of the buggy in front of the house, and we'd go in because Uncle John would be there. And she'd take Blackie up and put her in the barn and brush her down and take care of her, whatever care horses need after a run. And then she'd walk home. But she never complained about having to do anything, and she enjoyed it as much as we did. But then when it was winter time and it snowed, she'd get a sleigh, from Grandma and Grandpa letting her, and hitch Blackie to it, and maybe take a friend of hers or two, and maybe we'd ask some other friends of ours, kids, to if they want to go for a ride, and we'd get out and ride all around the countryside. No place in particular in mind. And then sometimes we kids would get out of the sleigh and stand on the back where the runners turned up, and stand and ride on those runners instead of sitting in the sleigh with blankets on covering your legs and hot bricks on the floor to keep your legs warm.
Really? Yeah.
And we really enjoyed the rides. And there again, when we'd be ready to go home, and Alvina would tell Blackie that we're ready to go home, and she would take off for home, and we'd go all through the same thing, Esther and I, and everybody else getting out their places, and that was our most recreation. But once a year, we'd go to St. Louis to the zoo, and I loved to see the elephants. One's name was Martha, and one was Jim. And I always thought I felt as if that elephant and I were were good friends because we both had the same name. And I guess as a kid, I wanted friends, but that would be the one thing they do. And then once a year, we'd go to St. Louis to see Barnum Bailey Circus, and we'd go to Shaw's Garden. Another time, sometimes we took a trip on the Mississippi River in a steamer, and we would find, Uncle John would always find something to do, and then a little extra, because when we'd go see the circus, then he'd find some sideshow he thought we'd like, and we'd go to that. And I can't remember what the occasion was that we went to, but there'd be a small Western show of some kind that we'd always go to. And we really got to see things when we'd be over in St. Louis. And the hard part of growing up was going to school. I loved school, and I didn't want to ever miss. But but I had to cross a bridge, and if you ever lived in the country, there's an old wooden bridge over a creek. You don't know what I'm talking about, because the water would, when it would rain real hard to the east, then the water would come rushing down through that creek and bubble up through the boards in the bridge. And I had the imagination that most kids have, that everything was going to happen to me. So when I get to the bridge, instead of going across it on the walkway, I would get out in the middle of the road. I'd look up and down the road and be sure there wasn't any car coming or any horse and wagon or anything like that. And I would stand there in the middle of the road, and I don't know what I was doing, if I was counting or what. But anyway, at a certain point, I would dash out and run across the bridge and make it across, and I'd be so happy that I finally got across that darn bridge. Because that was the thing that kept me full of joy the day going to school. Because otherwise, when it was nice, we would stay on the sidewalks and walk across the bridge and go on the sidewalk on the other side of the bridge. But when it was raining like that and I was by myself, I just run and I stayed in the road till I got about half a block or more away from the bridge, and then went on to school.
What was?
At-
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I don't know what I was going to say now.
What was your school like? What was the school like?
School was 2 floors, I think. I don't think it was the 3rd floor. Anyway, it was all 8 grades in the school, and we had teachers that were very partial to some kids. They didn't mind showing it, and the kids, we called them all the teacher's pet, and they could be rough on the rest of us, but the pets got to do the things they wanted to do, and we got the dusty erasers and do the dirty work. And we had one teacher when I was in 3rd grade, and if you weren't doing what he said, he'd throw something at you. If he hit you, fine. If he missed, well, he hated that, I'm sure. But anyway, I was working at the blackboard, and he either said something to me or I don't know what. I don't remember what it was, what caused him. But he threw an eraser at me and hit me in the back of the head. And I just grabbed up the eraser and turned around and threw it right back at him. He didn't do anything. I think I took him so by surprise that he didn't do anything. But anyway, that's the only time I ever tried to get beat with a teacher. But the discipline in schools were not the very best. One time I was sitting there at school, and I had long hair, and the boy took my hair, is in the braid, and dipped it into his inkwell. And we had inkwells built in the desk, and they were always filled with ink. And I had that dry up in my hair until I got home and got it washed out. And another time, the boy sat across the aisle from me. He was just had a mean streak up him. And anyway, he'd like to go out and hunt animals. And he went to hunt the skunk for some reason or other. And after he got the skunk, he took oil from us somewhere or other. I don't know how. But anyway, he brought it to school and poured it in the aisle between our desks.
Oh, that would smell. Ooh.
Oh, I was so sick. And we didn't have any inside toilets. You had to walk about a half a block to get to the toilets outdoors. So that's where I went. I was so sick from that. And any time after that I ever smelled a skunk, I was sick. For a long time, I held on. But on the whole, I liked school. And when I graduated, I didn't know if I'd get to go to high school or not, because we have to go to Lebanon, which was about 5 miles west of us. And there was one way to get there, to walk. And we lived on the south side of town. We didn't live in town, we lived on the other side of town. And I had to walk all the way to the crossroads, which were probably a good mile from where we lived, and then 5 miles to Lebanon, and up a hill, the last part of us, up a steep hill. But anybody had cars or anything, they didn't bother to drive their kids to school. They all just gathered out there and walked. And I think that a senior year, we finally got a bus. The school board got a bus for us. But the thing of it was, when we walked into the school, no matter how cold it was, how snowy or how rainy it was, if we were 2 minutes late, we got bawled out because we were late for school. They just considered we had to walk and fight the wind and the rain and the snow and things. But we managed through it, so it wasn't, I guess, too bad. And the thing was, we kids were all of us were told to never ride and take rides with strangers. But one day we did, and we got home a little earlier.
Oh.
And we were so dumb we didn't think anything about that. But some truck driver asked if we wanted to ride, and there were 3 of us. And we said yes, so we felt safe in number. So that all worked out fine. He was a gentleman, and we got home safe and sound. But we got home safe, and they wondered why we did that. And we finally broke down and told them, and we were told never to do that again, because terrible things could happen. So anyway, we continued to walk for 3 years, and then we got the bus finally, and it cost us not a whole lot. We had to pay some bus fare, but not a whole lot. And we took some sandwiches to school sometimes, but usually we ate at one restaurant, and there was just sandwiches, brain sandwiches, and all those goody things. And they just makes kids shudder now when they think about it. And I can remember going to that cafeteria, or that little restaurant, and they had a child, and so then when we'd come in the door, she said, "Here comes those brain kids."
Oh.
And she always hollering. And started eating up the brain sandwiches. And I guess we weren't too particular what we ate. Anyway, we did. And wouldn't done any good with us because Aunt Albina was not a cook. She didn't care for the kitchen too much. And if you had potatoes and meat and vegetables, it was fine. But the thing was, she would put in a big garden lettuce and carrots and tomatoes and all the general things, lettuce and spinach and things. And then we had a great big pecan tree, and we had blackberries and grapes galore and strawberries, and Uncle John had his garden things in another place. We had quite a bit of ground, and he raised watermelon, cantaloupe, and something else that I can't remember what, maybe sweet potatoes. And I know we had white potatoes. And there was something else I wanted to say about that. Well, anyway, if we got hungry, and there was cherry trees, and peach, and apple, and our neighbor had those little sweet pears. And we were always told we could come and get pears whenever we wanted any. And I just loved them. I sat on the tree and eat till I was full of them. And then I'd go home and I wouldn't be hungry for a meal. And never bothered Dan Albina that the kids didn't, when we did eat, because she knew we ate some of everything outdoors. And we had a nice backyard. We had a sandbox, a great big one, and we always had kids at the house playing in the sandbox, and we had a lawn swing, and we played games of that. We'd be traveling on that. That would be our way of traveling. And we played ball. We thought we did. But we had a big front yard, and us, well, it was a side yard. It wasn't the front. The front was the sidewalk built out to the street, and great farmer coming in. But the side yard was where our garage was, and a couple maple trees, but it was there that when the leaves had come down the fall, we'd rake the leaves into squares, and that'd be our house. And we'd have doorways and windows, be little scratched out places in the leaves. And we played in the yard most of the time. And then sometimes we would walk to the country to Aunt Albina's brother lived and had 3 girls and a boy, and it was way out in the country, and we'd go there to their house and stay all day. But we always managed to leave earlier. It was still daylight because we had to pass the cemetery, and whoever knew what might happen if you passed after dark, because there was always a story about 2 kids passing the cemetery at night, and or were outside the cemetery somehow or other, and they heard two people talking. One said, "You take that one, and I'll take the other one." And after they were doing, they'd gathered nuts from a tree inside, dividing the nuts.
Oh.
And the kids thought they were dividing up kids.
Oh my God.
And they collected, and those are ghosts that collected. So nobody took chances and ghosts would collect them. So, well, we lived with a lot of imagination. And I don't know what else.
What did you do for holidays? What did you do for holidays?
Oh, on holidays, well, there's always a parade, and you dressed in your best to go to the parade. But one time I found a dress in the catalog that I just thought I had to have for Decoration Day, because I always marched in that parade for sure. And I was in set for it and got it for me. And I'll be darned when the girl there showed up in the dress just like it. A girl I disliked terribly. And here she was in the same dress I had. Oh, that just spoiled my whole parade.
Oh.
But we got a new outfit every spring. And Alvin didn't bother sewing. So she took us to a dressmaker in Trenton, which was about 3 miles east of Summerfield. And we would take our measurements, and we'd have material that we picked out and a pattern. And in no time at all, she'd be called because she had the dresses ready to be fitted, and we'd drive it, and they'd drive us up to Trenton, and we'd try all the dresses, decide if we really liked them where they were. And one time she was making me a dress for something at school, and it was a wool pleated skirt and a sailor-like top to go with it to match it. They wore those kind of outfits a lot. And when I got home and we paid for it and everything else, would turn the skirt wrong side out, she had scorched the whole.
Oh my goodness.
She put the pleats in, and she wouldn't do anything about it. So I don't think she made any more clothes for us. I know we went someplace else. But it used to be that when school started, we'd get 3 new dresses, each one of us. And that just about did it for the school year. And well, once in a while we get another dress or coat or something. But we were all dressed about the same. It seemed like at school wasn't too much difference in the way of dressing. Summerfield was a small town, but they had a grain elevator, and Uncle John managed that. And it was hard work, because during the harvest time, he'd go in maybe about 4 o'clock in the morning and work till it was dark at night, till nobody else would be driving a team of horses with a load of corn or wheat or something. And then sometimes, when it was the harvest going on. He had it a lot easier. They already sold grain of all kinds. And like and all the old women in town, they just loved to get Esther and I and ask questions about things that didn't concern them the least bit. How many eggs do you get every day? Well, I expect your chickens to lay better than mine are because they've got that grain there at the elevator, and Johnny probably gets that free and just takes it home. Maybe it was the some kind of shells that they sold that chickens ate and made the eggshells stronger. And they just questioned us kids, Esther and I, about everything personal that they wanted to know. And I got in trouble with one old lady because everybody had their say about about the kids. And Dietrichs lived on the south edge of town. They didn't have any children. And I looked up and I saw the candy truck up at the Buchan store, and it was one that we were looking for, and it was Leaping Lena package of candy, a bar candy, and I didn't notice Lena Dietrich was out in the garden, and I saw one of the kids that was looking for the Leaping Lena the candy to get it, and I saw the kid, and I hollered at her and said, "There's Leaping Lena." And old Lena Dietrich thought I was talking about her, and she didn't telephone told Edith, and Alvina that I called her Leaping Lena. And I was furious because I hadn't even seen her, and until I guess she said something that I she got my attention. But anyway, I thought I'll get even with her. And I was a nasty little kid. I went by their house the next day and I saw their newspaper and I took it down and I threw it in the creek. I had time to stop at the creek and drop the paper in. And I thought, now she just won't have paper to read.
Okay.